So we all know Tony Stark is one of the best superheroes of the MCU, and rewatching his movies are so cool because each and every time I do so, I notice something new. Every single time. It never fails. But this time when I rewatched Iron Man 1 specifically, I realized in this movie, Tony Stark goes through the hero's journey. Now, the hero's journey is a widely recognized story structure where a protagonist, often considered a hero, embarks on a quest facing challenges and obstacles, undergoes personal transformation, and ultimately returns home changed, having overcome their fears and achieving their goal. And to me, honestly, in this first Iron Man movie, Tony hits all those right notes. So instead of giving you my review for Iron Man, which is usually what I do in this channel, this time around, I'm gonna do something that I've actually never done before on my channel and do a Iron Man essay on the hero's journey for Iron Man. So let's get into it. So right off the bat, the first thing in a hero's journey is the ordinary world. So Tony Stark lives as a rich and successful weapon maker, and he loves to party. Tony makes weapons for his dad's company, Stark Industries, and his dad's name is Howard Stark. And Tony lives in a mansion in Malibu, California. But after showing the US Army his invention of nuclear devices, he is kidnapped and put into a cave. And that is the ordinary world for our character. So now it's stage 1, meeting the mentor. In the attack, Tony was injured and was given a heart reactor, and without the reactor, Tony could die. So he could not go anywhere without bringing the heart reactor with him because it was not portable. It was connected to a box. So it was kind of difficult for him to do things without having to bring the reactor with him. But then a man who was in the cave with him made the heart reactor portable. And the man who helped him and is ultimately the mentor of this movie is Ho Yinsen, and they quickly become good friends. Ho Yinsen is the mentor for Tony Stark. He helped him on his journey. So now the next portion of the analysis is very important because it's the call to adventure. Tony's call to adventure begins when he makes his first suit, the Mark I. Soon Yinsen and Tony get, of course, sick and tired of being in this cave, Yinsen wanting to leave because of his family and Tony wanting to leave because of his freedom. And eventually, after molding iron and collecting scraps, they make a suit. But eventually, the terrorists catch on to what Yinsen and Tony are doing and flat out try to stop them. And they, of course, have the door shut and locked and barricaded, and that gives Tony enough time to get in the suit and finalize their plans on how to get out of here. But before that, of course, they're clearly gonna make it through the door before the suit is ready, so Yinsen spares Tony some time by grabbing a gun and distracting the terrorists. But unfortunately, this does not last very long as Yinsen is killed within a minute of leaving the room. But that is enough time for Tony's suit to fully be ready, and he goes rogue, killing all the terrorists that are in his way. But in his path to get out, he finds Yinsen all bloodied and bruised because he was unfortunately shot up by the terrorists. So after an emotional goodbye and a reveal that his family is dead, actually, so Yinsen was just getting out to get out, Yinsen passes away, and Tony loses his mentor. But this only fuels Tony, and he gets out of the cave and wipes out what he thinks is the remainder of the terrorists. And then he tries to fly away with the suit, and for a little while it works until he crash lands in the middle of the desert. Eventually, military friends, one of them being Rhodey, saves him and brings him back home. And that was all basically the ordeal, mixed with, of course, the call to adventure. So now the return. The return is definitely a lot because Iron Man's return is him going back to his Malibu mansion and fixing up the suit and making his official Iron Man suit that we all know and love. But then the real kind of final battle happens when he goes back to find the terrorists and kill them. Well, at least what remains of the terrorists. So we'll get to that in a second. So after Tony returns home, he starts and finishes his second suit, but he makes sure this time it does not get destroyed midair. And after testing the suit time and time again, fixing his wrongdoings and approving on those wrongdoings, the suit is ready. And he immediately, first things first, goes and finds the terrorists in a small village near the cave where he was kidnapped and placed in, and he finishes the job and takes out the rest of the terrorists. And then he flies away, being overall the hero of that ordeal. But of course, it's not over there, because his business partner, who actually worked with his father, is extremely jealous of Tony and wants to build a suit very similar to what Tony's Mark I was, because he was just yelling at people. Tony Stark built his suit in a cave with a box of scraps. I don't know why we can't do it in this big big, high-budget tech place with all this advanced technology? But truthfully, we all know the answer. He did not have the brains that Tony did. But of course, he becomes the new antagonist of this movie. So now our protagonist has to defeat our main antagonist now. But of course, right now he doesn't know that this is going on, and eventually Pepper gets involved, and Agent Coulson gets involved, somewhat Nick Fury also gets involved, and eventually this guy does become a threat and Tony must destroy. So in this final battle, we get to see an awesome fight between Iron Man and Ironmonger. So this fight was actually really well choreographed and really well done, and has a lot of cool scenes, like when Iron Man puts his hand up trying to blast Ironmonger but has no metal hand, and it's just his bare hand, and he says Ryuken, which is a classic line in some combat video games. But after fighting a very hard and long battle and almost literally dying, he eventually kills Ironmonger and saves Pepper. And then at the very end of the movie, when it's all said and done, at the very end of the movie, Tony is at a press conference, and of course with his signature favorite food, the cheeseburgers from Burger King, and at this infamous press conference, he announces that he is Iron Man. And then on that really badass note, the movie comes to an end. Now that was basically Iron Man's the hero's journey in this first movie. Now I could obviously go on so much with everything that Tony goes on to do eventually in like Age of Ultron and even Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, so on and so forth. But just sticking with this video and his hero's journey in this video, in this movie, then this is really all that he really goes through, you know? He has those villains, he has those demons, he has his journey, he has his mentor. Although he loses his mentor midway through the movie, he could still navigate without him. And actually, thanks to Yinsen's help, learns how to do this type of manufacturing and making suits. And although Yinsen dies midway through the movie, his character is still important to the overall story of the first movie, because he's the one who helps spark that thing in Tony that says, I could use my knowledge for the good of the world, to protect the world. And thus was born Tony Stark as Iron Man. And from then on out, he's a hero through and through, and he eventually, of course, goes on to make the infinite sacrifice and dies snapping his fingers with the Infinity Stone, saving the entire world. So yeah, Tony Stark is one of those heroes where I could confidently apply the hero's journey to, because he is just one of those characters that is always misunderstood. You know, we have scenes in Avenger movies, for example, like in Avengers, that first one, when Captain America's like, you're never gonna be the guy to make the hero play, to make the sacrifice. Although he does that twice. He does that once in that same movie, and of course the infamous one in Avengers Endgame. So yeah, this was really the hero's journey for Tony Stark's Iron Man. And obviously this was the thing that started the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you don't apply the hero's journey to it, and if you do, you'll still either way love it, because it's so nostalgic filled, and honestly, whoever doesn't really love it is missing out, really. It's one of the best Marvel movies of all time, and it is definitely a classic, and it will permanently be engraved in not only cinematic history, but just the timeline of movie adaptations on superheroes, well-known superheroes. And no matter how much time passes by over the next 10 to 15 years or 30 years from now, the hero's journey will always be around, and I feel like from person to person, people will think the hero's journey best applies to Tony Stark. Of course, it can apply to other superheroes, but none really apply as good as putting it with Tony Stark's character, because he goes from this rich, arrogant, disrespectful, cocky businessman to saving the world. Like, that is a beautiful hero's journey, really. And I don't think the MCU or any movie company or any film ever will be able to top what they did with Iron Man 2008. Now, obviously, this has been a very new situation for me, because usually I just review movies, but this time I decided why not have a little bit more fun and maybe cover Iron Man instead of a review, do an analysis, a essay, for example, really. But yeah, Iron Man is one of my favorite heroes of all time. Obviously, my number 1 is Daredevil, but number 3 is definitely Iron Man. Number 2 is Captain America. I don't care what anybody says. But really, yeah, thinking of the hero's journey, I only think of Iron Man to fit this role, really. And although this is a very new thing for me, I will definitely be open to doing videos like this all the time. So if you're watching this and you've made it this far into the video and you really enjoyed it, then comment down below what you maybe would want to see me do a analysis on next, because I'm not only open to just movie reviews. I could do movie analysis and movie essays and stuff, because that's all very creative and fun stuff for me. You know, content creating is a lot of fun, and doing it with movies and television shows are even funner. So if you have any really suggestions of heroes, villains, I'll be open to doing essays on those heroes and villains. But that is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this hero's journey video, aka analysis and essay on one of the most beloved superheroes of all time, Tony Stark. This has been Mr. Movie. Take care, guys.